I'm ashamed to admit that I listened to the woman at the bus stop not out of kindness, but because her grief was a lighter burden than my own. Her voice broke when she told me how the veterinarian, a man who hadn't cried in 32 years, had to grip the stall door to keep from falling as he described the boy's trembling hand reaching through the slats. Then she whispered what the horse did next, and I knew that some bonds are forged in the very moment they are broken, and I have not been able to stop seeing that hand reaching for something that might already be gone. The man was named Arthur. That much I know. He worked at a veterinary practice just outside Saratoga Springs, in that stretch of New York where the land starts to roll and the fences are all white and the horses stand in the golden light like they know they're beautiful. Arthur had been doing this work for 32 years. He had seen everything a horse could do to a person and everything a person could do to a horse, and he had stopped being surprised a long time ago. That's what he told the woman. He said he walked into every case expecting the worst, and he was usually right. The call came on a Tuesday. A school in the next county over had a boy they couldn't handle. They had tried everything. They had tried the counselor. They had tried the behavior specialist. They had tried suspension. They had tried expulsion, but the law said he was too young. They had tried a dozen different classrooms and a dozen different teachers and a dozen different ways of saying the same thing. This child does not belong here. The school had called Arthur because they also had a horse problem. There was a mare in the stable behind the agricultural building, and she had kicked 2 students and bitten a third, and the school board had voted to have her put down. But the boy, the one they couldn't handle, he had climbed the fence and gone into the stall with her. The boy's name was Leo. Arthur told the woman at the bus stop that he knew Leo was going to be hard before he even met him. He said that when he pulled into the parking lot of the school, he saw a child sitting alone on the curb near the horse pasture. The child was small for his age. He had dark hair that fell over his eyes, and he was not looking at anything. He was just sitting with his hands on his knees, staring at the ground between his feet. Arthur said he recognized something in the way the boy sat. It was the posture of someone who had learned not to hope. The kind of stillness that comes from having tried and failed so many times that trying itself feels like a lie. Arthur went into the school. He met with the principal, a woman named Helen who spoke with the particular exhaustion of someone who had been fighting the same fight for too long. She told Arthur that the horse, a 4-year-old thoroughbred mare named Ember, had been donated to the agricultural program by a breeder who had found her too dangerous to keep. The school had agreed to take her because they thought they could work with her. They thought the students could learn from her. They thought a lot of things, and none of them had turned out to be true. She's going to kill someone, Helen said. She said it flatly, like she was reading from a report. She's already broken 2 ribs on the first student she kicked. The second one got her arm. The third one only got a bruise because he was fast enough to get out of the way. We can't keep her. The board voted yesterday. We have the paperwork for the vet to come tomorrow morning. Arthur asked about the boy. Helen's face changed. It was a small change, very quick, but Arthur noticed it. He said her jaw tightened and her eyes went somewhere else, like she was looking at something she had been told to look away from 100 times. Leo is a problem, she said. He's been in 6 different classrooms this year. He's aggressive. He's disruptive. He doesn't follow instructions. He doesn't talk to the other students. He doesn't talk to us. We've had the district psychologist come in 3 times. We've tried everything we know how to try. His father has been called in for conferences 12 times. He stopped coming after the 7th. Arthur asked what Leo's father said. Helen looked at the window. His father said Leo needs to learn how to be a normal boy. That was the last time he came. The real mistake here is that everyone involved was operating under the same assumption, that the problem was something to be solved, extracted, removed. The school saw a child who didn't fit. The father saw a son who was broken. The board saw a horse that was dangerous. And they were all using the same logic. If something doesn't work, you get rid of it. You don't ask why it doesn't work. You don't ask what it needs. You just remove it and hope the absence fixes the system. That logic makes a kind of sense until you're the one being removed. Arthur asked to see the horse first. He said he wanted to assess the situation before he made any recommendation. Helen led him through the school, past the classrooms where children were reading and doing sums and laughing at things Arthur could not hear, and out the back door to the stable. The stable was old. It smelled like hay and dust and the particular sweet rotten smell of wood that has been wet too many times. There were 6 stalls, but only one was occupied. Ember stood in the back corner of her stall, her head low, her ears pinned flat against her skull. Arthur said he had seen that posture before. He had seen it in abused horses. He had seen it in horses that had been starved and beaten and left alone for too long. But Ember had not been starved. She had been fed. She had been housed. She had been given everything a horse needed to survive. And yet she stood like a horse that had already died. Arthur approached slowly. He talked to her in the low voice he used for frightened animals. He watched her eyes. He saw the way they tracked him, the way her muscles tensed and her weight shifted onto her back legs, ready to kick. He stopped at the door of the stall and did not come closer. "Tell me about the boy," he said to Helen. Helen told him that Leo had been found in the stall with Ember the previous Thursday. A teacher had seen him climbing the fence and had run over to stop him, but by the time she got there, Leo was already inside. The teacher stood at the door and screamed at him to come out. She said the horse was dangerous. She said he was going to get himself killed. And Leo did not move. He stood in the corner of the stall, pressed against the wall, and he looked at the horse. And the horse looked at him. And neither of them did anything. The teacher had to get the groundskeeper to come and physically pull Leo out of the stall. Leo did not fight. He did not speak. He just let himself be pulled, and he sat on the curb outside the stable until someone told him to go home. Arthur asked if anyone had asked Leo why he did it. Helen said no. She said everyone was too busy being relieved that he was alive. Arthur looked at Ember again. He looked at the way she stood, the angle of her head, the way her breath came in short, shallow bursts. And he thought about a boy sitting on a curb with his hands on his knees, not looking at anything. Here's the beautiful part. Arthur made a decision. He could have written the paperwork. He could have come back in the morning with the drugs and the needle and the forms. It would have been easy. It would have been what everyone expected. But he did not do that. Instead, he asked to meet Leo. They brought Leo to the principal's office. Arthur said the boy walked in and did not look at anyone. He stood in the middle of the room with his hands in his pockets, his shoulders hunched, his eyes fixed on a spot on the floor near the window. Helen introduced them. Arthur said hello. Leo did not respond. Arthur asked if Leo wanted to sit down. Leo did not move. Arthur said that was fine. He pulled out a chair and sat down himself, and he waited. The woman at the bus stop told me that this part of the story took a long time for Arthur to tell. She said he stopped several times. He would start a sentence and then stop again from a different place. She said she did not rush him because she understood that he was not telling her a story. He was trying to understand something himself. But as Arthur sat across from that silent boy, he had no idea that the lesson about understanding would come not from words, but from a horse no one else could reach. Arthur said he asked Leo about the horse. He said he used the word horse, and Leo did not react. He said he used the horse's name, Ember, and Leo's eyes moved. Just a flicker. Just a tiny shift in the direction of his gaze. But Arthur saw it. "You went into her stall," Arthur said. "Why?" Silence. "You know she's dangerous, right? She hurt 3 people. Still silence. Everyone thinks she should be put down. When have you, like that boy, walked into a situation everyone said was hopeless because you saw something in the danger that no one else could? They think she can't be fixed." Leo's hands came out of his pockets. He wrapped his arms around himself. He was very small in that room, in that chair, under that fluorescent light. Arthur said he watched the boy's jaw work, like he was chewing something he wanted to spit out. "The school thinks you can't be fixed either," Arthur said. "Did you know that?" Leo looked up. Arthur said that was the first time he saw the boy's eyes clearly. They were very dark and very still, and they held something that Arthur had not expected. They held no anger. They held no sadness. They held the same thing he had seen in Ember's eyes in the stable, a kind of waiting. As if the boy had already learned that the world was not going to give him what he needed, so he had stopped asking for it. "She's scared," Leo said. The words were so quiet that Arthur almost did not hear them. "She's scared," Leo said again. She doesn't want to hurt anyone. She just doesn't know what else to do. Arthur asked how Leo knew that. And Leo told him. He said he had been watching the horse for weeks. He had been sitting by the fence at lunch, not eating, just watching her. He had seen the way the other students approached her. He had seen the way they did not know how to be quiet. He had seen them wave sticks at her and shout, and come at her with their hands open like they wanted to grab her. He had seen her ears go back. He had seen her weight shift. He had seen the kick coming before the student did, and he had closed his eyes because he knew what was going to happen and he could not stop it. She just needs someone to be quiet, Leo said. That's all. Just someone to stand with her and not do anything. That's all she wants. Arthur told the woman at the bus stop that he sat in that chair for a long time. He said he looked at this boy, this child that everyone had given up on, this child they called aggressive and disruptive and impossible, and he saw the thing that no one else had seen. The boy was not the problem. The boy was the answer. He had been standing in front of them the whole time, and they had been too busy trying to fix him to see that he was not broken. Arthur made another decision. He told Helen that he would delay the euthanasia. He said he needed more time to assess the horse. Helen did not like it. She argued. She pointed out the liability. She pointed out the vote. She pointed out that the board had already made their decision. But Arthur was calm. He had been doing this for 32 years, and he had learned that the only thing that matters in the end is what you actually do, not what you say you were going to do. He asked if Leo could come to the stable the next day. Helen said no. Arthur said he understood. He said he would be at the stable at 7 a.m, alone, to do the assessment. He said he could not stop Leo from being on the school grounds. He said he could not stop Leo from sitting on the curb. He said that was a school discipline matter. He was just a vet. The next morning, Arthur arrived at 6:30. The sun was just starting to come up, and the fog was lying in the low parts of the field. He walked to the stable and found Ember standing in the same position she had been in the day before, in the same corner, with the same look in her eyes. He said hello to her. She did not respond. At 7, he heard the fence creak. He turned and saw Leo climbing over the gate, dropping down onto the gravel, brushing off his hands. The boy walked toward the stable with a slow and deliberate pace, like he was measuring each step. He stopped at the door. He looked at Arthur. Arthur nodded. What strikes me at this point is the courage of that child. He had been pulled out of that stall by the groundskeeper. He had been told 100 times that the horse was dangerous. He had been told 100 times that he was dangerous. And he came back anyway. Most people spend their whole lives not going back to the places where they were rejected. Leo was 9 years old, and he had already learned that some things are worth the risk of being rejected again. Leo walked into the stable. He did not ask permission. He did not look at Arthur. He walked directly to Ember's stall and stopped at the door. He stood there with his hands at his sides. He did not reach out. He did not speak. He just stood. And Ember moved. Arthur said it took his breath away. The horse lifted her head. Her ears came forward. She took one step, then another, walking toward the door of the stall. She stopped with her muzzle inches from Leo's chest. And she dropped her head. She lowered it until her nose was nearly touching the ground, and she stood there, in that position of total submission, waiting. And in that single, wordless gesture, everything Arthur had known for 32 years about horses and about broken children suddenly made no sense at all. Leo reached out his hand. And that was it. That was the moment that Arthur said he would never forget. The boy put his hand on the horse's forehead, just above her eyes, and he left it there. They stood like that for a long time. The horse breathing. The boy breathing. The sun coming through the cracks in the barn walls, casting long orange lines across the floor. Arthur said he felt like he was intruding. He said he walked out of the stable and stood in the field and waited. He watched the fog burn off. He watched the sun get higher. He thought about the things he had seen in 32 years. He thought about the horses that had been put down because no one had the patience to understand them. He thought about the children he had seen in waiting rooms and emergency rooms, children who had been broken by the people who were supposed to protect them. He had never connected them before. He connected them now. When he went back inside, Leo was sitting on the floor of the stall. Ember was lying down beside him, her head in his lap. The boy was talking. Arthur could not hear what he was saying. It was a whisper, a murmur, a language that was not meant to be understood by anyone except this one animal. And Ember's eyes were closed, and her breathing was slow and deep, and for the first time since Arthur had seen her, she did not look like a horse who was waiting to be hurt. Arthur did not write the paperwork. He told the school that the horse was no longer a danger. He told them that he would be coming by every week to check on her. He said he would train a student volunteer to care for her. Was Arthur right to declare the horse safe and take responsibility for it, or did he risk everyone's safety for the sake of a troubled boy? He said he had a volunteer in mind. They let Leo come to the stable every day. For 2 weeks, Leo arrived before school and stayed after. He cleaned the stall. He fed Ember. He brushed her coat until it shone. He talked to her in that low whisper that no one else could hear. And Ember changed. She stopped standing in the corner. She started coming to the door when she heard footsteps. She started nuzzling Leo's pockets for the apples he brought. She stopped being a horse that was waiting to die and became a horse that was waiting for the boy to come back. Arthur said that was the easy part. The hard part came after. The hard part was what happened when Arthur had to tell Leo's father what the boy had been doing. The father came to the school for a meeting. Arthur was there. He said the father was a big man with a red face and hands that made fists without him noticing. He listened to what Arthur said. He listened to the principal say that Leo was doing well in the stable program. He listened to them say that Leo had found something he was good at. And then he said, "My son does not need a horse. My son needs to learn how to behave like a normal person." Arthur said he watched Leo's face when his father said that. The boy was sitting in a chair in the corner of the room. He had his hands in his pockets. He was looking at the floor, and something in his face went flat. Not angry, not sad. Flat, like a light that had been turned off. Arthur's mistake, the one he told the woman at the bus stop about, the one he still loses sleep over, was that he did not say anything. He let the father take Leo home. He let the father ban the boy from the stable. He told himself it was not his place. He told himself he was just the vet. He told himself 100 things that he still tells himself, and none of them make the memory of that boy's face any easier to carry. The school found another student to care for Ember. A girl from the agricultural program. She was good with animals. She followed Arthur's instructions. The horse was fine. The horse was safe. The horse was everything they had wanted her to be. But Arthur said he saw Ember looking at the gate sometimes. She would stand at the door of her stall and look out toward the fence where Leo used to sit. She would stand like that for a long time, her ears forward, her breath misting in the cold air. And then she would go back to her corner and wait. The woman at the bus stop told me that Arthur looked at his hands when he told her this part. She said his hands were old and scarred and steady, but they were shaking just a little. She said she asked him if he ever saw Leo again. He said yes. Once. He saw him a year later, standing on the curb outside the school. The boy was bigger. His hair was longer. He was looking at the stable, and his hands were in his pockets, and he was not moving. Arthur walked over and stood beside him. They did not look at each other. "She's still here," Arthur said. Leo nodded. Arthur said he wanted to ask 1,000 questions. He wanted to know if the father had stopped coming to conferences. He wanted to know if the school had found a new way to fail the boy. He wanted to know if Leo was still sitting alone at lunch, watching the fence, waiting for something that was never going to come back. But he did not ask any of those things. "Is she okay?" Leo said. "She's fine," Arthur said. "She's a good horse. She's happy." Leo nodded again. He looked at the stable for a long moment. And then he turned and walked away down the road, his hands in his pockets, his shoulders hunched, not looking back. Arthur stood on the curb until the boy was out of sight. He said he stood there so long that his legs started to ache. He said he tried to think of what he could have done differently. He ran through every moment of those 2 weeks, looking for the moment when he could have said something, done something, fought for the boy the way he had fought for the horse. He could not find it. He could only find the memory of Leo's face going flat in that room and the sound of his father's voice saying that the only thing wrong with his son was that he was not normal. The woman at the bus stop finished the story. She looked at me. Her eyes were very tired. She said Arthur told her that he still drives past the school sometimes. He told her that Ember is still there, still standing in her stall, still waiting for the boy who understood her. And he told her that he still does not know if he saved the wrong animal. I think about this story more than I should. I think about the boy on the curb. I think about the horse that stood in the corner. I think about the veterinarian who went home that night and could not sleep because he had seen something beautiful and let it slip through his hands. And I think about the particular silence of a child who has learned that the adults will not help. Not because they are cruel, because they are tired, because they are busy, because they do not know how to see what they are not looking for. The last thing Arthur told the woman, she said, was this. He said that every time he walks past Ember's stall, he stops. He says her name, and she looks at him with those dark, still eyes, and for just a second, he sees the boy in them. He sees the thing they both lost. And he says he stands there until the feeling passes, and then he keeps walking. I got off the bus at my stop. I walked home in the dark. I thought about my father, who had died a week earlier, who had loved me the only way he knew how, which was not the way I needed. I thought about all the silences between us, all the things I had not said because I had learned, like Leo, that the adults do not listen. I thought about the horse in the stable, still waiting. And I thought about the boy who had come back one time, just to ask if she was okay. I do not know what happened to Leo. I do not know if his father ever changed, or if the school ever found a different way to see him, or if he grew up to be a man who still sits on curbs with his hands in his pockets. But I know that for 2 weeks, a horse who had been given up on lowered her head to a boy who had been given up on, and they stood together in the golden light of a stable in Saratoga Springs, and they were not broken. They were just waiting. And waiting is not the same as giving up. Waiting is just what you do when you still believe someone might come back. That moment when Ember lowered her head to Leo, did you believe something inside you shift? If this story made you ache with that quiet, stubborn hope, that's exactly what the like button is for. If you've ever waited for someone who didn't come back but you waited anyway, this channel is your place.